Welcome to Georgia Legends. I'm Jeff Hullinger inside the Atlanta History Center. Sam Nunn is the third longest tenured senator from the state of Georgia. His work, making the world a safer place from weapons of mass destruction, is indisputable. His fingerprints on the U.S.'s military, indelible. I sat down with the former chairman of the Armed Services Committee to talk about his illustrious career, his life, and his legacy.
He was one of the most influential senators of the late 20th century, leaving his indelible mark on all things related to the military and national defense, from restructuring U.S. and NATO's response to the Soviet military threat, to nuclear détente and disarmament, always striving to make the world safer from weapons of mass destruction. During his tenure in Washington, Sam Nunn would be called the Democrats' supreme commander on defense matters and gained the reputation as the most strategic thinker on Capitol Hill. Quite the resume for a man from a small town in Middle Georgia. Samuel Augustus Nunn Jr. was born in Macon, Georgia on September 8, 1938. Sam was the second child of Mary Elizabeth Nunn and Samuel Augustus Nunn Sr. Nunn's father was a lawyer, farm owner, and the mayor of Perry, Georgia. His mother, a homemaker, and older sister, Harriet Betty Nunn, was born in 1936.
He was 48 when he got married. He was 50 when I was born. He was born in 1888.
Nunn lived in Perry with his parents, but he did some work on the nearby family farm.
I spent a lot of time out there with my father, but we lived in town. And so my first jobs were not on the farm. My first job was with my basketball coach. Teachers never have gotten paid enough. They still don't, but they really didn't get paid much back then. He had a worm farm in his backyard as a part of supplementing his income, so he sold to the local fishermen jars of worms. They had a big manure pile. So my first job was digging in the manure pile, finding big fat worms and putting them in a jar. It was not a high-paying job, but it was good practice for later experience in politics.
He also learned about being a member of a close-knit town where life's lessons were often taught by the collective community. One evening, while working as a bat boy at the local semi-pro baseball team, Nunn decided that he wanted to keep one of the team's baseballs.
I didn't have a baseball, so I stuck it in the bushes and said, I'll come back and get it later. Petty theft, but important principle violated.
When he got home, his father was waiting.
I walk in about 10 o'clock at night after a baseball game, and having hit one ball, that was the first time I'd ever done it. And he puffed and said, how'd the game go? And I said, oh, that was great. He said, Sam, you are going to take back that baseball, aren't you? And I said, yes, sir, now that you put it like that. Somebody had called him, told him that they saw me. So the town expected better of me. You know, my father expected better of me. So that was a real expectation, and that's symbolic of a small town. It made a big difference in my approach to little things.
Nunn was active in the Boy Scouts, achieving the rank of Eagle Scout, an honor student, and a standout athlete in high school, co-captaining the high school basketball team and playing for the high school coach who gave him his first job.
I was not a talented, and I was not big, I was not strong, I was not fast. I say jokingly I played basketball back when you could be short and slow, but I had a coach who was a psychologist. And I probably heard him say 10,000 times, if you're going to win, if you're going to be a great contributor to this team, you got to pay a price. You got to pay a price. What he meant was training, work, teamwork, shooting a lot, running a lot. He meant you got to pay the price.
The Perry High School basketball team would go on to the state championship his senior year in 1956. The coach, Eric Staples, ever the psychologist, gave the team an unusual speech after trailing the other team by 2 points at halftime.
Boys, they're bigger than we are. They're stronger than you are. They can jump higher. They're fast as lightning. They're well coached, and they're good shooters. You have played as well as you could play. He said, we're probably going to lose this ball game, but I want you to know how proud I am of you, and they just have more talent. He walks out. We were so angry with the coach, we couldn't contain it. I mean, none of us figured it out until years later. We went out, we ended up winning the game like 20 points, by 20 points. He knew us.
It, too, would provide a lifelong lesson.
It had a big effect on my life in terms of teamwork, in terms of discipline, in terms of you've got to pay the price.
In 1956, Nunn contemplated going to Auburn or Georgia Tech. Both had something Nunn was interested in: good SEC basketball teams and a Navy ROTC program. While neither offered him an athletic scholarship, Georgia Tech's coach scouted Nunn while he was playing in the North-South High School All-Star Game and offered him a chance at a future scholarship if he came to Georgia Tech. While his dream of making the team came true, he had less luck getting into the Navy ROTC.
First day at Georgia Tech, my first test was an eye test, physical for Navy ROTC. I never won classes, I never had an eye test. I couldn't see at all. I had 20/80 vision, but you had to have like 20/30 correctable, something of that nature. And so I could not get in Naval ROTC. So I was in Army ROTC, but I still had that sort of itch for the Navy. So a fraternity brother of mine had joined the Coast Guard for 6 months, and my dad was ill then. I knew I had at some point a responsibility back home. And so the 6 months in the Coast Guard at Cape May, New Jersey, enlisted was appealing to me, and I looked into it and signed up and got in and went. After my junior year at Tech, I knew by that stage I wanted to go to law school, so I went 6 months to Cape May, New Jersey, enlisted, and came back and went directly into law school. At that stage, you could go 3 years of undergraduate if your record was okay, and then go directly into law school. You did not have to have a degree.
He would continue in the Coast Guard as a reservist until 1968, reaching the rank of petty officer. Nunn decided to finish his undergraduate work at Emory University. When he was done with his Coast Guard commitment, he went on to complete his law degree there in 1962. After passing the bar, Nunn took a job in Washington, D.C.
I had spent a year in Washington right out of law school, 62 to 63. And that was one of the most eventful years of my life. I was on the staff of the House Armed Services Committee. My great uncle was the chairman of that committee, Carl Vinson. He told me if I passed the bar exam, I could come up and work as a staff lawyer. My father was ill, so I just stayed 1 year, and that was a huge factor. I probably would have wanted to stay much longer if that was not the case. But lo and behold, right in the middle of about 6 months into my service in 62, it would have been October of 62, my boss was named John J. Courtney, and wonderful Irishman. He came in and said, "Sam, I've got a death in my family. I cannot go on an Armed Services Committee, Appropriation Committee staff." This was not senators and congressmen, top staff people, Senate, House, Armed Services Appropriation, Air Force trip to NATO. He said, "Would you like to take my place?" I said, "Of course," and lo and behold, the Cuban Missile Crisis breaks out right in the middle of that. So everywhere we went, we were being briefed by the top Air Force people. We were being shown maps. We were right there in Wiesbaden Air Force Base, right at the peak of the danger. We thought the war was going to happen any time. Made a huge impression on me in so many different ways. For one, how short the decision time was, how crucial the decisions were. And then, of course, the next day we were in Norway. Khrushchev backed off the crisis. The world breathed a huge sigh of relief, and so did we. And that was the way I got so involved in not only the nuclear risk, nuclear dangers, can we make the world safer, but also decision time, realizing how short the decision time is. That trip in 1962 not only got me very interested in perhaps running for political office, but also had a lot to do with my focus on NATO, on military affairs, on trying to reduce nuclear risk. One other thing, Jeff, and it also had to do with my own personal life, because I met my wife to-be. I had never met her before. Right after Khrushchev backed down, the next stop after Norway was Paris.
And she was with the CIA.
She didn't tell me that at the stage, but she was in the American Embassy, and she was an, quote, agricultural attaché, but she was in the CIA. So a couple of years later, we got married. So that to say the least, was an eventful trip.
Did you know right away that this was going to be your spouse?
Well, I kid her by saying I fell in love first sight, first date. She picked me up late at night. We rode around. She had to entertain some guests with the embassy. And I fell in love. And I tell her it was because of the euphoria of Khrushchev backing down. I was just in a euphoric moment. But in any event, I really did fall in love. She didn't. And it took 3 years for me to close the deal. In any event, it was a big moment in my life and a great decision. She played a huge role in my whole political career.
In 1963, he returned to Perry to set up a law practice and help his ailing father run the family farm. After a few years, Nunn's lifelong sense of community and his new sense of public service moved him to run for the Georgia State House of Representatives. Campaigning was a new and important experience for him.
I kind of forced myself the first 2 or 3 weeks to really shake hands with everybody and meet everybody, and I got where I enjoyed it. Yeah. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't want to do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of my life, but campaigning actually is a tremendous education in terms of getting prepared to represent the people of Georgia.
After getting elected, Nunn spent just 1 term in office, but during that time, he contemplated a more ambitious role.
My aspiration was to be a member of the House of Representatives. I never thought I could be a United States Senator. I didn't look in the mirror and see a senator staring back.
When one of Georgia's U.S. Senate seats became open in 1972, he took his shot. David Gambrell had been appointed to fill the seat by Governor Jimmy Carter after the death of longtime Senator Richard B. Russell. But Nunn decided to run for the open seat and eventually beat Gambrell in the primary. While he was not Jimmy Carter's first choice for the job, he eventually came to support Nunn in the general election.
Carter supported me vigorously in the general election, which was a tough general election in 1972, when Nixon was winning 76% of the vote against McGovern in Georgia. So Carter was a big factor. So we worked together for a long time. I had great admiration for him. And I really got to know him when I traveled with him.
The lifelong Democrat would spend the next 26 years representing Georgia in the U.S. Senate, quietly gaining power and gaining influence.
I'm pleased to bring before the Senate S. 1352, the National Defense Authorization Act.
He would chair the Armed Services Committee for 8 years during the late 80s and early 90s and become a trusted and experienced expert in the U.S. Senate on national security and national defense, shaping U.S. military policy and procurement. Along the way, guiding and shaping the foreign policy of 6 presidential administrations. In 1986, Nunn would team up with Republican Senator Barry Goldwater from Arizona and help create the Goldwater-Nichols Department of Defense Reorganization Act, sweeping legislation that would reorganize the Pentagon, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, increase civilian control over the Department of Defense, and make defense spending more efficient. While Goldwater's name was listed in the bill's title, a tribute to his years of service, he was about to retire from the Senate. The bill included many of Nunn's ideas and recommendations fostered during his time serving on the Armed Forces Committee during the previous decade. It would create the most sweeping changes in U.S. national defense in almost 30 years. Throughout Ronald Reagan's second term, concerns grew about the growing defense budget and the impact on the national debt. Nunn began to look at ways to make the U.S. military more responsive to the changing threats from around the world. He believed that NATO nations needed to shoulder more of the cost for their defense. In 1985, an amendment he added to the military authorization bill would have drastically reduced U.S. troops from Europe. The amendment failed, but it did put NATO on notice, and NATO countries eventually increased their stockpiles of weapons and ammunition to thwart any conventional Soviet attack. He also took on the president's plan to house the new MX missiles in existing fixed silos, eventually forcing the Reagan administration to abandon the idea. Nunn worked tirelessly to reduce the number of nuclear weapons from both the Soviets and the U.S., But more importantly, he wanted to reduce the risk of hair-triggered reactions from either side. 3 years earlier, Nunn, along with Senator John Warner, proposed the establishment of crisis control centers in Washington and Moscow. The centers would exchange information on ballistic missile launches, nuclear accidents, and other incidents to help defuse any potential crisis. In 1987, President Reagan would sign an agreement with the Soviet Union that would establish the nuclear risk reduction centers in both countries. During President George Herbert Walker Bush's term, Nunn would flex his power and influence again when he opposed the confirmation of John Tower for the Secretary of Defense. He would delay the confirmation vote twice while the FBI investigated allegations that the senator received campaign money from Department of Defense contractors. While charges were never brought against him, Nunn had other concerns. Tower, who was a former four-term Republican senator from Texas, was also known as a hard drinker and a womanizer, things that Nunn believed made him unfit for the important cabinet position.
Hey, Mr. Nunn. Mr. Nunn, no.
Nunn's stand would push Democrats to reject Tower in the final tally. It was the first time in 30 years that a presidential cabinet nominee would not be confirmed. In 1991, Nunn reached across the aisle, collaborating with Republican Senator Richard Lugar from Indiana to create the Nunn-Lugar Threat Reduction Act. The legislation helped assist the Soviet Union account for and dispose of their weapons of mass destruction as the communist government crumbled and vast areas of the former Soviet Union separated into independent nations.
I think we're too much governed by the whims of the moment rather than the visions of the future.
Considered a conservative Democrat, Nunn supported school prayer, amending the U.S. Constitution to require a balanced budget, but opposed the push to allow homosexuals to openly serve in the military.
So if they keep their views private, if they don't reveal anything about their private life, there's no problem. Is that
No
right?
problem at all.
He also supported abortion rights, certain gun controls, and increased immigration. In early 1991, Nunn voted against President George Bush's authorization for military force to remove Iraq troops from Kuwait, preferring to let U.S. sanctions have an effect before committing troops.
Iraq is isolated and suffering from the embargo, and time is on our side.
A decision that he says he later regretted, and one that may have tempered any ambitions to run for even higher office.
Back in the 80s and 90s, I had several opportunities to, let's say, throw my name in the hat if I had desired that position. But I love the Senate. I love the Armed Services Committee. I love working with the military. I felt I was getting things done every now and then at least. And so I never developed the burning desire, which is what you have to really have to run for president. And if you're going to be running for vice president, it means you really at some point would probably run for president. And that burning desire is absolutely essential. I had it for the U.S. Senate seat. I had that burning desire. So I know it when I feel it. And I never did have it for being president.
In 1994, Nunn, along with Jimmy Carter and Colin Powell, went to Haiti at President Bill Clinton's behest to demand Haitian dictator General Raul Cedras step down and restore democratic rule. The envoy succeeded in convincing the strongman to leave, averting a U.S. military intervention on the matter.
I have been in constant contact with them for the last 2 days. They have worked tirelessly, almost around the clock. And I want to thank them for undertaking this crucial mission on behalf of all Americans.
In 1995, Nunn announced his retirement from the U.S. Senate, saying he no longer had the zest and enthusiasm for the job.
This has been a difficult decision made much harder for me because of my deep respect for the many people who have encouraged me to run. But I know in my heart it is time for me to follow a new course.
After leaving public office, Sam Nunn returned to his first profession as a senior partner at King & Spalding Law Offices in Midtown Atlanta. In 1996, he was awarded the Department of Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service for his work and leadership, quote, during a period of extraordinary challenge and change for the Department of Defense, end quote. He served and continues to serve on various corporate boards such as Chevron, Coca-Cola, and General Electric. He also received an honorary degree in 2008 from Georgia Tech, where he became a professor at the Sam Nunn School of International Affairs.
We have democratized the ability for people to learn how to make weapons of mass destruction if they have the raw material and the ingredients. So you've got supply and you got demand and you got know-how proliferation, all the ingredients of a perfect storm. That's why I've concluded that preventing catastrophic terrorism is the #1 security challenge facing us in the 21st century, and it's going to take a global effort to be able to reduce that risk.
Using the expertise gathered during his decades-long career in Congress, Nunn teamed up with media mogul Ted Turner in January 2001 to form the Nuclear Threat Initiative.
We have a global challenge, and we are in a race between cooperation and catastrophe.
The nonpartisan, nonprofit's goal is to reduce the threat of nuclear and biological weapons, as well as finding solutions to these threats. Sam Nunn would continue to help lead the organization for the next 2 decades. While Sam Nunn has slowed down a bit, he still enjoys a good game of golf or a long hike, a longtime member of Augusta National, as well as spending time with his 2 children and 2 grandchildren on the family farm in Perry, Georgia.
How much time do you spend thinking about your legacy? As you grow older, is that a part of age? Is that as much a part of, I don't know, growing older as health concerns?
I think it is inescapable, and when you walking a little slower and you're thinking a little slower and you're writing a little slower, you start thinking about, well, what difference have I made? And I kind of think of a couple of things. One is I hope that I've somehow lived up to the expectations that my family had of me, and I hope that I've lived up to the expectations that small town community had of me. They had high expectations, and that was one of the things that helped inspire me. And then second, I hope that even in a troubled world, someone will say that Sam Nunn helped make the world a little safer than it otherwise would have been. And the third thing that I would think about is that in the day where we have so much bitterness in our country and in our politics and political system, I hope that perhaps young people observing or reading about my career will come away with a feeling that you can be in politics and still conduct yourself with dignity and civility and respect all of those you deal with. That is enormously important for young people to understand that and to believe that they have a place in governance and in the political world where we have to have good leaders.
Senator Nunn still active with the Nuclear Threat Initiative and in public policy. He likes to squeeze around to golf at Augusta National when he can get the opportunity.